Hey, Pretty Girl Club. Welcome back to the social climbing series. I'm not sure if I'm going to post this on Patreon or on YouTube, but one of the pretty girls, she asked a really good question. She said, "Hey, Exoticals United, I remember you said that if you are sad and depressed when you're poor, you will not be happy when you get money. Can you expand on that? You did talk about it in your recent episode where you said you prefer to be pretty and broke than ugly and rich. You also mentioned that pretty privilege is your fun, since you don't overeat, don't drink alcohol, don't do drugs, etc. I have never heard anyone else talk about that, and it stands true to me how much joy it can bring. I have watered down my looks in the past, only going out as my pretty self from time to time to experience it, and it always would be a huge hit of dopamine. Since then, I dress up more and even restarted to put on makeup, but I'm only 50% of the time. Like, this is it. It feels like a secret identity sometimes. I wonder, does your personality privilege give you joy, and how? Pretty privilege versus personality privilege? Ideally, you have both. So I want to talk about this because I just feel like this pretty girl, she hit a lot of different topics. So if you're sad and depressed when you're poor, you won't be happy when you get money. Yeah, I have talked about that because in my case, when I was depressed, when I got money, my money was usually spent on coping mechanisms. So, for example, food, spending money on sweets. Using food, that used to be a way to regulate my nervous system back in the day. Like, if I was triggered, if I had a job I hated, or I was in a relationship that I didn't like. Oh, by the way, one of my depression triggers actually is toxic, dusty relationships. So that's why I talk so much on this channel about like not getting into dusty relationships, not settling in any area. So if your man's ugly, if he's dusty and broke, or he's not your preference at all, you don't really like him that much, you have to be careful with doing stuff like that because that can actually trigger depression, because depression is really just you had hope for a certain lifestyle. You had hope that you would have something, and basically your expectations didn't meet reality. So I feel like that's really how depression starts. But I do think that when you're depressed, usually if you do get money, you're not going to spend it to help your future. Generally speaking, people tend to spend their money on coping. So things like weed, drinking, whatever, going out, blowing their money at the club or something like that. Maybe shopping, anything that can get you a quick dopamine hit, that tends to be what a lot of depressed people will spend their money on, or at least in my case, that's what I did. But as far as what my depression triggers were, number one is male centeredness. So I've noticed anytime where I look back on my life, anytime where I was depressed, I was always male centered at the same time. There was always a man in my life, or like I was in some sort of relationship, the relationship went bad, and I was isolated. That's another thing too. Isolation is not good for me long term. I am an extrovert, so I do need to go out and like have friends and like, have fun activities and stuff. So when I think of my top two depression triggers, it's dusty relationships is probably number one. Number two would be isolation, so being trapped in my apartment, never going outside. I don't have any activities scheduled, no friendships, nothing to do for myself, no hobbies. Um, just kind of like being idle. So just sitting there doing nothing, like, have you ever been in college, or maybe you live with your parents or something, and you don't go outside, especially if you live in a fun city? Like, I remember one time when I was sad, I lived in a city that was so much fun, and I never went anywhere. They had so many free events in that city, but I just didn't go anywhere. So I think that in my case, having a toxic environment with toxic friends, toxic relationship, and then not having any hobbies of my own, that's definitely a depression trigger, because I just feel like a lot of people won't admit that hobbies are a part of your identity. It is a part of your identity, because that's what you like to do. Oftentimes, your hobbies, that's tied to your passions, it's tied to your gifts, or maybe you're like exploring a new side of yourself. So, anytime I stop exploring, anytime I'm no longer curious about the world around me, that's actually a sign that I'm probably depressed. So, I think the first step for me with like not being depressed is knowing what my triggers are, being able to identify what's making me sad in the first place and then fixing it. Um, I think that money was a factor as well, but back then I did have money. I just would spend my money on bullshit. Like I would spend my money on clothes that I would not wear because I wasn't going anywhere. So it's like, you're spending your money on clothes, bitch, you ain't going nowhere. You're still gonna sit in the same apartment. You're still gonna be on your bed, doom scrolling on your phone. You're still gonna be sitting around watching Grey's Anatomy all day. So I think that getting money when you're depressed, I don't really think money is always the solution to things like depression because I feel like depressed people, they end up blowing the money, or it's like they're happy temporarily for like a day or so, and then after that they're no longer happy. But I feel like for me, what can cause depression is if all of my identity anchors start to fall apart. So that's a good question to ask yourself as an exotical. Who are you? What makes you special? What makes you who you are? Is it your passions? Is it your lifestyle? Because once that stuff gets taken away one by one, sometimes it can feel like you have nothing left. So I just think it's very important. This is why I talk so much about like having multiple sources of validation, having multiple sources of fun, having different passions and hobbies, and kind of like exploring and not putting all your eggs in one basket because you never know when a certain part of your identity can be taken away. And I feel like one of the biggest things that I took for granted when I was in my 20s, I feel like I took my free will for granted. I know it sounds really random, but it's like the fact that I had so much freedom. I had so much freedom. I was pretty privileged, obviously. I had thin privilege. I had all these things going for myself, but I was more blind to them at the time because I was in an environment where people didn't really promote beauty. It was looked down upon to be like flaunting your pretty privilege. And I told you guys about my background as well, just being very modest. I was always a very modest person. I was never the type of person that would like wear belly shirts and like wear bra tops and stuff like that. All of that didn't start happening until I was older. So I think part of what can cause depression too is not taking advantage of your free will, not using the power that you do have, or like recognizing your power when it's too late. And so I think for me, that's why in my 30s, I feel like I'm a lot more bold. That's part of why I started this channel in my 30s. Like I always wanted to start some sort of YouTube channel, but I just never did it. And so in my 30s, I was kind of like, okay, I don't want to waste a decade. I don't want to just sit and wait around and like never do shit. And then I look back and I'm 40, 50, 60, and 70, and then I never actually started anything for myself. So that's a big depression trigger for me. So I think for exoticals, you just have to realize what could make you depressed and then just get rid of that thing. Or, just make sure you're doing stuff that keeps you emotionally afloat. But this pretty girl, she also said, um, you talked about in your recent episode, you said you prefer to be pretty and broke than ugly and rich. Yes, I do prefer to be pretty and broke. Like, I'd rather be pretty and be lower middle class or working class than to be a multi-billionaire and be like hella ugly. Because think about it, all those billionaires and stuff, you can still have an inferiority complex. I don't care how much money you have. I don't pedestalize billionaires. I don't pedestalize rich people. So a lot of people on social media, they think that wealth is the solution to all your problems. Thankfully, in my case, I'm from the suburbs, so I have been around people who do have a little bit more wealth. But guess what? A lot of people who were unattractive and wealthy when I was growing up, they still had inferiority complexes about their looks. And it caused them to have all of these weird pick me behaviors, codependent behaviors. There were women who came from great backgrounds. They came from wealthy backgrounds and then they settled for less in their relationships. They were still pick me ass bitches. Why? Because they didn't think they were pretty enough. And so an insecurity is an insecurity. And I've noticed, even if you look at celebrities, I can use Kylie Jenner as an example. She is very wealthy. She came from a wealthy background, but guess what? She spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions, trying to figure out how to have a face card. So it's like, imagine all that wealth. You would think that somebody who's that wealthy and they're a part of a famous family, you would think that that's enough, right? You would think that they would be happy. Well, no. Rich people have insecurities too. And so I've realized that a lot of the women who are rich, a lot of them feel like attaining beauty is still the first step in like leveling up. Beauty is a part of leveling up, and that's that. So I don't care how rich somebody is. I guarantee you, if she's rich and ugly, she's going to be spending a lot of her time and energy, and she's going to be spending decades experimenting with all these different surgeries and then having to get a nose job revision and then, like, getting some chin implant and then getting it removed and then getting fillers and then getting them dissolved. So a lot of women who are rich and unattractive, they have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and they're spending all this time researching doctors so they can figure out how to fix their face or how to fix their body. Being ugly, it can affect anybody, whether you're rich or poor. And I just feel like it's so much easier to increase your wealth versus increasing your beauty, because a lot of those rich girls who do get a bunch of surgeries, most of them end up getting botched. So, like in the case of the Kardashians, I think the Kardashians look pretty normal. Well, honestly, I've never met them in person, so I don't really know how they look in person. But like, it's very easy to get surgeries on your face, and then now your nose is too small, so now you have to get like your teeth done a certain way, and then like every time you get a surgery on your face, it affects the dimensions of your bone structure and stuff. So a lot of women who are rich, they spend years and decades just trying to figure out how to get better facial features. So it's much easier for me as a poor person. Like if I'm broke and pretty, I could just go work as a barista and get some tips, and I automatically have more money. I may not become rich, but I could at least get out of poverty. It's easier for me to get out of poverty than it is for somebody to fix their entire bone structure and their entire body and, to fix how their waist to hip ratio is. Getting a job and attaining money is so much easier, or at least for me, it's easier. So that's why I say that if I had to choose, I'd rather be poor and be pretty than to be rich and be ugly. Because being ugly is expensive. Not only is it expensive in terms of the money you have to pay to get all the surgeries, but it's also expensive in society. Because now, even if you do change your face, like Kylie Jenner, for example, people still remember how she looked before. So there's a part of pretty privilege that she may never have because she just wasn't born that way, and people knew who she was before she had the pretty privilege. So that's another thing that you're always going to have to deal with as a rich, unattractive woman. So, then there's that psychological issue as well. That's why I said I would rather just be born cute. I'd rather just be born pretty and then just live my life and then just try to get some extra money in another way. And then I see people saying, oh, well, you're only pretty because of makeup. No, the reason I look pretty with makeup on is because my face is pretty. So, if you're one of those girls where you feel like, oh, I only look pretty with makeup on, okay, but your face is still pretty then. Because if you were truly ugly, then the makeup, it would not do anything. You'd still be ugly, basically. The makeup would actually probably make you look worse if you're ugly, because makeup just emphasizes the features that you already have. Makeup is putting color and is putting sparkles and highlighter on your actual facial features. So if a woman is truly unattractive, then like when she puts on makeup, she would actually look way worse. So I think another issue we have is we have women calling themselves ugly when those women are actually not ugly. If you're not deformed, like if you don't have any extreme deformities, or if people are not shocked when they look at you, if people are not shocked and disappointed when they look at you, you're probably not ugly. You're probably medium, or if you really want me to use the word ugly, I will say it's called medium ugly. That's not being truly ugly though. Somebody who is truly ugly is like children will cry when they see them. People view them as like disabled, like their face is considered like a handicap. But yeah, if I had to choose between being pretty and broke versus ugly and rich, I'd rather just be pretty and broke, because all I would have to do is go to the Dollar Tree, put on some Dollar Tree makeup. Now I look gorgeous. Now I can use my face card to get a second job if I need to, or I don't know, start an influencer business, become a beauty person online, and then that can help me to attain more money. So, and that's another thing too. I don't necessarily have to be rich as long as I'm not poor. So, like I said, it's easier to get out of poverty than it is to get out of being hideous. So, I stand 10 toes down on that. But this pretty girl says, you also mentioned that pretty privilege is your fun since you don't overeat, you don't drink alcohol, you don't do drugs, etc. I've never heard anyone else talk about that, and it stands true to me how much joy it can bring. Yeah, in terms of pretty privilege, I do feel like being pretty, it gives me a sense of joy because I told you guys that I played with dolls all the way until I was about 19 years old. So apparently that's not normal. I didn't know that until I went to college. But yeah, I played with Barbies all the way up until I went off to college. I don't have any Barbies anymore. I don't know where they are. But the way that I still practice being playful is by viewing myself as the doll. So that's how I view myself. I know that there are some women who do not view themselves as a canvas. They view themselves as being like this masterpiece that's already finished, and that's okay as well. So I don't want to put the beauty on a hierarchy. I'm not telling you guys that you have to look like a Barbie doll. But in my case, there is something that's really satisfying to my inner child to just treat myself like the Barbie. So that's why it's fun for me being pretty privileged, even if I'm not going on a date or whatever. Because a lot of girls, they make being pretty privileged only about the male gaze. For me, it's literally fun to look at my little eyeshadow palette and to like put all the different colors on. It's fun for me to like paint my nails with sparkles and to put like a nail sticker on and to put on like a glittery eyeliner. That has nothing to do with the male gaze. Men are not noticing if I'm wearing a glittery eyeliner. So that's how I know that I'm genuinely doing it to be authentic to myself. So the way that I view fashion and like beauty and stuff, that's just an expression of my femininity, and it's a form of being feminine and playful. It's a form of feminine playfulness. Because think about it, when you're a little girl and your parents give you dolls and Barbies, why are they doing that? Well, it's a form of teaching you femininity. It's a form of feminine playfulness. And I told you guys that I was never as interested in baby dolls. Babies were always boring to me. Like in terms of playing when I was a little girl, baby dolls were boring. Like just getting the stroller cuz I didn't want to push the stroller. When I was a kid, I was like I don't really want a stroller cuz I don't want to have to just like push it around and then like, I have to keep track of it and everything. That didn't sound fun to me. And so it's actually kind of ironic that I grew up to not have any kids. So I think that the way that you express yourself as a little girl, that's actually a really big clue as to what type of femininity you're going to have as an adult. So for some of you guys, maybe you didn't play with Barbies. Maybe you did something else. Maybe you were into cars or something as a little girl. Like, the little Barbie cars, or like, I don't know, maybe you liked video games. Maybe you were more of like a tech type of girl. You liked playing dress up on the video games. So all you have to do is just look back at the games you would play as a kid, and then that will kind of give you a clue as to what kind of pretty privilege you might like as an adult. So for me, dressing up and stuff, it is fun for me. So yes, I do wear cute clothes to the grocery store. Yes, I do. I have about 3 or 4 dresses in my closet. And they're just like casual dresses. So I have one, it's like a hoodie dress. So it looks like a sweatsuit, but it's a dress. So I have that. I wear that to the grocery store. I have a very basic sundress that I also wear. I just throw it on whenever I'm going to the store. Um, and that's just a part of my femininity. That's how I always pictured myself when I was a little girl. So that's a good question to ask yourself. How did you picture yourself when you were a little girl? What kind of games did you play? Whenever you fantasized or had daydreams as a little girl, what did you daydream about? And not even as a little girl. Like in my case, I daydream when I listen to music. So even like when I used to take the bus when I was in college and I would get on the shuttle and then I would be sitting on the shuttle with my earphones on, anytime I would play music, for whatever reason, I was always daydreaming of myself dressed up in like a sparkly silver outfit from head to toe. So kind of like a Beyonce vibe, like very similar to how you would see Beyonce or like Diana Ross or somebody. So I always imagined myself when the song was playing, I would be wearing a silver outfit. My hair would always be like swooped to the side, and then I would have these cute silver earrings that would match. in my daydream. And then I was always just like standing there, like either singing the song or maybe I was just walking around. And then like whenever I would daydream, there were always other people in the daydream and all of us would be wearing cute sparkly silver outfits. So there would be girls and guys, all of us would just be like super glamorous together. And then other people would always be looking at us like, wow, look at these people, like they're so cool. So I don't know why. I know that's really random. I don't know why that was always one of my daydreams, but that's something I would think about. Or like whenever you're on the bus, if you take the bus or the subway or if you drive to work, when you're listening to music, what do you think about? What do you think about while you're listening to music? Because in my case, I'm always kind of fantasizing about myself. Or like, even if I'm fantasizing about some other person, like let's say I have a crush on a guy or something, I don't know. Whenever I would have a crush on a guy, even if a song came on that made me think of the guy, I was always in the daydream. It was never like I'm only daydreaming about someone else. So whenever I'm daydreaming, it was always me being dressed up, me wearing fancy, cute clothes like a fur coat or something pretty like that, or me wearing like a silky shirt or like these sparkly earrings and stuff. It was always me being glamorous. So I think that's another clue to the type of pretty privilege that's the most authentic to you. So that's part of why I have fun when it comes to pretty privilege. Some people want to be pretty so they can survive. I am not in beauty survival mode. I was born with pretty privilege. My family members, my mom, my sisters, everybody in my family on both sides is pretty privileged. And I know that that's not the case for everybody. Um, but yeah, it just makes me feel like I'm fulfilling something within my heart. I don't know how to explain it, but it's kind of like I'm honoring myself. I'm restoring a sense of dignity to myself by the way that I dress or by the way that I care for myself. It's like a form of self care. So you know how some people they're obsessed with hygiene and like that's their form of self care. Like yeah, I do the fancy baths and stuff too, but for me, it's also the way I express my femininity out in the world. That's my form of like self care. So it's almost like a form of emotional self care. It's like a form of enhancing my self image because when I look in the mirror and I get excited, that's how I know I'm doing something right. So like I'm dead ass. Like I literally have looked in the mirror before and got excited. That actually happens to me pretty often. In fact, that should be my default experience. That's kind of my standard for when I look in the mirror. I should be getting excited. I should be smiling at myself when I look in the mirror. I shouldn't be looking in the mirror and then spiraling. If I'm looking in the mirror and spiraling, I'm probably depressed. Something bad is happening in my life because I'm neglecting myself. So that's another good way to gauge where you're at on your pretty privilege journey. Like, what do you feel when you look in the mirror? What emotions come up? And I'm not talking about just when you're glammed up. I'm talking about when you wake up in the morning, when you go in there in your robe or your bonnet or whatever, how are you feeling? So in my case, I remember like, okay, so whenever my hair is long and healthy, because remember, I told you guys there was a time where I lost all my hair, where I was 90% bald, like just straight up bald. I was very sick or whatever. But when I look in the mirror, if my hair looks very healthy and shiny and it's like growing and everything, I love when my hair looks shiny. That's really the biggest happiness trigger for me when it comes to hair. So if my hair looks shiny, I'm literally going to be smiling a little bit when I look in the mirror and I'm going to be kind of admiring my hair. I also remember like when I first started losing weight. So when I was a beluga, once I stopped being a beluga and I looked in the mirror and I saw my jawline, I saw that I only had one chin. I remember I got so excited. I was feeling myself that day. I remember I was at the Cheesecake Factory. I was at the Cheesecake Factory with my family. My hair was pulled back into a ponytail. Um, okay, sorry, I had to pause it for a second, but I was talking about how basically I started feeling myself and I felt happy looking in the mirror when my hair was in a ponytail and I only had one chin and my face didn't look like a bowling ball. And so I just feel like part of your feminine expression, it has to do with satisfying your inner child. I talk about this a lot, like kind of reparenting yourself. My beauty routine is a part of reparenting myself. So, no matter how good your parents are never going to be perfect. And so, there are naturally going to be parts of your identity that may not have been nurtured as much when you were younger. And so, for me, embracing my beauty and just like being creative and kind of exploring my beauty and exploring my phenotype, that is a way of kind of like reclaiming my identity and nurturing my identity. It's a way of nurturing my creativity as well because I view my beauty as an expression of creativity. So for me, it goes deeper than just, oh, I want to be cute or I want to be hot so some guy could like me. No, we're exoticals. Guys already like us. Like, we're already put on a pedestal. So a lot of the times when exoticals are showing our beauty, I feel like we come from more of a space of creativity versus trying to gain acceptance because we don't deal with as much social rejection as women from other groups. Um, but in the case of my beauty, I feel like it's an expression of my creativity. I get to play around with different colors. I love playing around with different colors. It could be hair colors, it could be makeup colors, nail colors, clothing, like different colors of clothing in the spring. Also, with my beauty routine, it helps me to be festive and to celebrate the seasons without being a beluga. So instead of celebrating fall by drinking pumpkin spice lattes every day and eating everything, I will celebrate fall by wearing a cute dress that's like orange or doing like a rust colored eyeshadow look or doing like a fall themed manicure. So beauty has a lot of different uses for me. It's not just about being perceived by others, it's about like satisfying that desire to celebrate. It's a form of celebration, honestly. So instead of me celebrating with food, oh, it's my birthday. Oh, it's a special day. Let me celebrate by eating. No, I'm going to celebrate by dressing up. I'm going to celebrate by putting on a cute outfit or doing a cute makeup look. I'm going to celebrate by putting on a different type of lip gloss today or, something like that. I just feel like beauty, it's very simple. It's something that's easily attainable. It's something that's attainable for most women. If as long as you're not ugly, then I think that, having pretty privilege, it is something that you can attain in one way or another. And I feel like by experimenting with my beauty, it has made me into a more creative person. Also, I've become more multicultural through my beauty because whenever I go on Pinterest, I learn about so many different cultures. Like, those hats that are like a beret? Seeing those and seeing like where those originated or just seeing different types of fashions and like where they started around the world, it has actually helped me to learn and appreciate other types of people around the world. So, believe it or not, I feel like beauty has helped me to become more of an open-minded person. It helps me to appreciate the beauty of other women, and beauty is a form of inspiration for me. So, it's like I get to look in the mirror and be inspired by how I did my makeup versus constantly looking outside of myself or wishing I could look like somebody else. A lot of the girls who wish they could do their makeup or whatever, they just never tried. But in my case, my beauty, it kind of gives me a sense of expression. It's like a sense of self expression. The way that I dress, the way I carry myself, how I do my makeup, and all that, that's an extension of my identity. It's an extension of my personality. Um, so for example, if I'm wearing a very unique outfit, let's say I'm wearing like a vintage outfit, like a 1950s pinup outfit, because I actually do wear stuff like that sometimes. So if I'm wearing a vintage 1950s kind of like pinup Barbie doll, what was it called? Like a vampy. I forgot what they're called, but just think of the girls who wear the red bandanas and their hair is in pin curls or they look like Betty Boop or something. I like to do some looks like that and it's just a part of my feminine expression. It's a way to kind of like show off my versatility and also tap into an alter ego if I want to. So, for example, part of what actually helped me lose weight was buying fitness outfits. So, when I was a beluga, I didn't identify as a gym girly. I didn't identify as a hiking girl. I didn't identify with like being active at all at that time in my life. But then once I went to the mall and I got like a very basic t shirt with like some matching leggings. I think the entire outfit was like $10. So once I had that outfit, it helped me to tap into this alter ego of being a fitness girl. So it actually helped to push me. it helped push me into going to the YMCA and like taking these classes and like losing weight and stuff. So I think that a lot of people, they don't understand the psychology behind beauty. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing with their beauty. And I feel like that's a disadvantage. That's why a lot of women get jealous of your femininity, because you know how to have a feminine strategy. So me dressing up in a certain outfit, like a fitness outfit, to kind of tap into that fitness girl aesthetic, me dressing up like that, it was a way of kind of tricking my brain into tapping into that identity a little bit more. Because when I would look in the mirror, I see myself in workout leggings and a matching shirt, so it's kind of like, I feel like the way that you look is an entryway into a certain culture. So I've talked about this before. If you want to know what culture somebody wants to be a part of, just look at how they dress. Do they dress like old money? That's the culture they're trying to get into. Do they dress like a white boomer? Do they dress like a country girl? Do they dress like a cowgirl? Do they dress like a cheerleader or like a video vixen or kind of like this BBL Miami aesthetic? However a person dresses, that's the culture that they want to be a part of. So in my case, when I was a beluga, I wanted to be a part of skinny girl culture at the time. I wanted to be a part of gym culture. And so instead of walking around in my pajamas, I decided to get myself a little gym outfit. And then before I knew it, I started having fun with it. And I remember getting myself these fancy hoodies because at the time I didn't feel confident enough to wear tank tops and stuff because I was too much of a beluga back then. So I didn't want to show my arms or my stomach or anything. But I could wear hoodies. And I remember they had this lace up hoodie. So it was like a normal black hoodie, but then the sleeves, the long sleeves, had like a string lacing up the sleeves, kind of like how a corset would lace up. It was like a string going all the way down the sleeves. And I remember thinking that was so cool and just like kind of getting creative with my gym girl alter ego at the time. Because being a gym girl, I had to train my way into that being a part of my identity. And so as time went on and I kept going to Zumba classes, I started getting a little bit more fashion, like little outfits that would go with the Zumba class. Like they have little shirts that say Zumba on them. And like, I don't know, it's just really cute. So that's an idea that you can do. You can use your beauty to tap into a certain identity that maybe you've never had before. Sometimes your fashion and your aesthetic, it can work as a bridge to help you to kind of like get into that mindset. So when I was in college, I used to wear a lot of business clothes. And that's because that's what I wanted to be. That's the culture I wanted to be a part of at the time. I really wanted to get a job. I wanted to be like a young businesswoman. So that's why when I would go thrifting, I was getting button up shirts and like suspenders and like it's so funny because I remember in college, one time somebody accused me of thinking I was all that because I was wearing suspenders underneath my little blazer. Um, but no, like that was my way of tapping into who I wanted to be. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think that fashion and beauty can be used as like a manifestation tool. It can help you to kind of like change how you see yourself. And it also helps to change how the world views you as well. As long as you're not trying to convince people that your enhancements are real, then you're good. I think that's what makes most women insecure. It's because she's wearing a wig because she wants to convince the world that her wig is her real hair. Well, yeah, of course it's not fun for you then. Because you're trying to lie. You're trying to convince the world that your contacts or whatever are real, and you're embarrassed if people find out that it's not. When I wear beauty enhancements, I'm not trying to convince anyone that my wigs are real. Like I told you guys, I would wear different hairstyles to work all the time. So no, it's not me trying to convince anyone of anything. It's more so just about my creative expression. It's just another way to have fun that does not involve food. So it's like, okay, just because you're addicted to black and milds and processed food, well, that's not my addiction. My addiction is decorating myself, self care. That's my addiction. Tapping into different aesthetics. That's what I like to do. So why is it that you don't shame women who just want to eat Uber Eats every single day? You don't shame those women. You don't shame the women who just want to smoke different hookahs or do all these different drugs all the time. You don't shame the women who are borderline alcoholics, high functioning alcoholics. But suddenly, when I want to be a glamaholic or a beautyholic, oh, well, no, that's a problem. and I'm being shallow and extreme. No, that's gaslighting. You're just mad because you can't do it. So, in my case, I just feel like beauty is a healthier form of self expression because I'm using my own body. I'm not hurting anybody else. Me wearing a wig or me wearing makeup or whatever, that's not hurting you. The only people that would get offended are people who are threatened by me overtaking their beauty. That's what it is. They're threatened by how I look when I wear certain things. Um, that's one of the main arguments I see. Well, that hasn't really happened with me, but I have noticed that some women, they get mad because they feel replaced. So they feel like, oh, you can't wear braids. Oh, you're hopping in and out of blackness because you're wearing braids or you're wearing faux locks. Like, you shouldn't be able to wear that. Only dark skinned black women should be able to wear that. No, you're just mad because Chloe and Hallie are cute and they get praised for their beauty and you don't. That's what it is. It's just another form of jealousy. I also feel like pretty privilege is a positive coping mechanism for me. So I told this story in the Patreon before where this jealous ass bitch, she was being mean to me when I was in class. Um, and so as a coping mechanism, instead of me talking back or being rude or disrupting the class, I decided to just start painting my nails. So that was my coping mechanism. Literally, I was painting my nails. I didn't reach for food. I didn't go smoke a cigarette. I didn't go smoke weed or anything. No, I just reached for my little nail polish in my purse and I started putting little sparkles on my nails. And that was my form of coping. So I just feel like beauty, it's a form of artistry. You know, makeup, that's an art. Fashion is an art. Hairstyling is an art. And I think that's what a lot of people forget. So the way that I view beauty is from more of an artistic lens versus just viewing it as trying to get the male gaze or trying to fit in with a certain race. Because at the end of the day, beauty enhancements don't change my genetics. So I think it's kind of silly to try to use an enhancement. Like I'm not going to try to convince other people that I'm a white girl, for example. So I think that's where a lot of women go wrong. You know, they want to convince the world that they're an Indian girl or something. And it's like, you may look like an Indian girl. You might pass as Indian. Who knows? But eventually, whoever it is you're trying to impress, they will find out that your genetics are not Indian. So then what do you do then? You know, so I feel like that's where the black community steers women wrong in terms of beauty. And to be honest, I think that the black community gives some of the worst advice, actually, when it comes to beauty and pretty privilege and what that means. Because you got all these women who didn't even grow up with pretty privilege. They didn't even attain pretty privilege until they were like 40 years old. They didn't attain pretty privilege until they became millionaires or until they got a few surgeries or whatever. So they didn't grow up with the actual pretty privileged experience. So these people, you know, a lot of the teachers, they're learning alongside their subscribers, but they're speaking from a high horse as if they're an expert on pretty privilege when they didn't even have it. But this pretty girl said in her comment, you mentioned that pretty privilege is your fun since you don't overeat, don't drink alcohol, don't do drugs, etc. I've never heard anyone else talk about that, and it stands true to me how much joy it can bring. Yeah, and also something else that brings me joy when it comes to beauty, I also like matching with my friends or family members sometimes. So, like, I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures of the moms and the daughters and they have a matching outfit. I think stuff like that is so cute, like wearing matching colors and stuff. So, beauty actually can help you to form a sense of community with other women. And I've talked about that before too, how I've literally made new friends before because of my outfits. Because, like, I'll be wearing a pink fur coat, and then there's another girl in the room wearing a pink fur coat, and then we just start talking because we're both wearing pink fur coats. So, beauty is really a bridge. That's what beauty is. It's a bridge for you to get something else. It can be a bridge into connecting with others. Well, and that's what most women use it for, but I feel like they're just using it to connect with men. And it's like, first of all, men have very low standards. Most men will fuck anything. You don't even have to be pretty. You don't have to be pretty. Just look at who your boyfriend cheated on you with. Look at her. She wasn't pretty. Look at all the women they're jacking off to on Corn. Those women do not have face cards. A lot of those women are not even women. You know, some of them literally have androgynous faces and men still want to screw them. So I feel like a lot of women, they're only using beauty as a bridge to connect with men. And that's a very low level way to use your beauty. That's the low, it's kind of like a waste almost. It's almost like a waste because that man still wants you anyway. Because most men are just going to sleep with anything. Most men are super desperate, especially if you have an ass or something. Like when a man is fantasizing sexually, usually he's fantasizing about your body, not just your face or whatever. So, yeah, I think that only focusing on beauty from the perspective of the male gaze is silly, not to mention the fact that most men don't even know what they're talking about. Men are not experts on makeup and wigs and stuff, so they don't even know what they're talking about. Like, I've heard men say that they don't like makeup, but then they have a celebrity crush and their celebrity crush wears makeup, and they just don't know that she's wearing makeup. But this pretty girl, she said, I have watered down my looks in the past, only going out as my pretty self from time to time. I experience it, and it would always be a huge hit of dopamine. Since then, I dress up more, and I even restarted to put makeup on, but only 50% of the time I'm like this. It feels like a secret identity sometimes. So, when it comes to my pretty privilege, I don't always have the same level of beauty. I don't always have the same type of beauty. So, for example, going to the grocery store, my makeup, the level of makeup I'm wearing, is not going to be the same as when I'm like going to a formal event or something. And so I think part of that is learning how to feel beautiful in multiple different types of beauty. And you can only do that by practicing. So, for example, right now it's summertime when I'm recording this. And so I've been experimenting with different aesthetics, kind of like the boho aesthetic a little bit. That's the one aesthetic that I don't usually tap into. I don't have any boho clothes. I only have one shirt and it's kind of boho looking. But other than that, I don't tap into that aesthetic. But I think that pretty privilege, it has to be practiced. Pretty privilege is actually a skill. I think it can be a skill. I think that learning how to do certain looks or learning how to feel comfortable with different types of beauty is a skill. So, for a lot of women who feel trapped in their own beauty, they feel trapped in the lace front. They feel trapped with the lashes. They feel trapped in the acrylics. So, they literally feel ugly if they don't have it. Well, that comes from not diversifying your beauty or not practicing enough with other kinds of beauty. So, that's something to think about too. Because in my case, I know how to look beautiful with my real hair, with fake hair, with my natural face with no makeup, with makeup on. Like I've learned and practiced what look works for me. And so even if I am technically not as glam, some people think that beauty equals glam, and I strongly disagree. Some women's glam looks like a drag queen. They actually look like a transvestite when they do their glam, and that's what they won't admit. So I don't think that beauty and glamour are the same thing either. And I think in the black community, they confuse the two. They just think that, oh, if I just pile on all these different types of glamour, then I will be perceived as beautiful. And it's like, no, you're supposed to do whatever feels authentic to you and whatever looks best with your actual face and, your skin complexion and all that. And then for the pretty girl who said that she feels like her beauty is kind of like a secret identity. So what makes you feel like you have to keep it a secret? Are you in an environment where beauty is a threat? Like are you in a hostile environment where they don't like beautiful women? Because that was actually a big factor for me too, was getting out of environments where they're threatened by beauty. So, that's why I did a video about the church recently, because I feel like people in the church, they do tend to be very hostile towards being beautiful. Because remember, when you're pretty and beautiful, you're automatically going to be called sexy because, people are sexually attracted to beauty. So I think that if you're in a religious environment, that is going to be a hostile environment. You may not be able to experiment with your beauty as much. And by the way, that's why some women have a disadvantage. It's not that those women are ugly, it's more so that she didn't have the time, she didn't have the emotional safe space to experiment with her beauty. She didn't feel safe because, maybe she was in an Afrocentric community, and so she couldn't experiment with Eurocentric types of beauty. And I'm not talking about lace fronts, because the lace front culture is actually not Eurocentric. It's more so Indian centric. It's Latina centric because they promote like Peruvian hair, Brazilian hair, etc. So I actually wouldn't even call the weave industry Eurocentric. It's more like person of color who's not black centric. It's exotical centric. But I think that's something to think about too. What makes you feel like you have to keep your beauty a secret? Why do you have to hide your beauty? Why do you have to hide a part of your femininity? Why aren't you allowed to wear makeup? Do people talk shit when you wear makeup? Because, like, in my case, like with my old job when I was an accountant, that environment, I wouldn't say the entire environment was hostile. There was really just one woman in the office who would always talk shit whenever I would change my look. But that's just one person, and she was 500 pounds. She was obese. She was obese. She had the long acrylic nails and the long burgundy braids as an accountant, which I've never seen in my life, but that's a whole different conversation. Um, but yeah, so who do you feel you're keeping your beauty a secret from? Who are you hiding your beauty from? Are you hiding it from your parents? Do you live with your parents? And, maybe they don't like it when you wear mini skirts or something like that. Are you hiding it from your boyfriend? Do you have a boyfriend or a man in your life who is trying to control like how you dress? Because if you feel like you have to keep your beauty a secret, usually that means that there's somebody in your life who is threatened by your beauty. Because remember, beauty is a form of social power. So there's somebody in your life who's threatened by your power. They're threatened by the power that you have when you actually dress up. So that's something to think about. So, like in my case, whenever I go to a new group, so let's say I go to a new tennis group, maybe I'm going to a volleyball or a hiking group, I will actually gauge how I feel in that setting. Like, okay, how are pretty women treated in this setting? Are there a lot of other girls who feel comfortable being feminine and pretty? Or is it an environment where people talk shit about the pretty girls? Because if that's an environment where women are hostile, if I'm not going to be celebrated, I'm not going to go there. So, that's why I say go where you're celebrated, go where you have the biggest pedestal. I actually don't care whether you guys hang out in the black community, white community, Asian community. I don't really care. I don't pedestalize any one race or ethnicity. Um, but whenever I go to a new social setting, I will actually examine how I'm treated by both the women and the men. Like, okay, are the women nice to me here? Or are people like being mean to me? So, for example, there's this one group that I go to, and all the women are nice to me. The women are very nice. They always compliment my outfits and stuff. They'll be like, "Oh, you look like a Barbie, whatever." But then I notice the men in that environment, some of the men will actually be mean to me and they'll yell at me on the court when I'm playing, or they'll try to give me the stereotype like I'm just the dumbass, kind of like the dumb bimbo. So that's something to examine too. Like, how is your beauty received? Like, what happens when you dress up a certain way? Are you attracting male hater archetype? Or is like, what's your hater archetype that is caused by your beauty? So in my case, usually it is DL men and DL women who are part of my hater archetype. When I do my Barbie aesthetic, it is usually those types. They tend to be threatened by me meeting feminine stereotypes or being hyper feminine. Some people are offended by kind of this Barbie type of beauty. They feel like it's try hard, or they feel like you're being a pick me by wearing pink or whatever. Um and I don't really have an opinion on that, but I have a fluid beauty standard. I don't care what your beauty standard is, but just don't try to push your shit onto me. Because guess what? It's my body, my choice. So if I want to wear pink from head to toe, I can. But yeah, that's something to think about. So are you willing to defend your beauty? Are you willing to talk back if necessary? So when I got yelled at on the court a couple weeks ago by this bitch ass, dusty ass dude, when I got yelled at, I actually clapped back at him. And I actually talked back and I was like, you're not going to be able to just yell at me on the court. Like, if you don't want to play with me, just don't play with me. Because in the case of that guy, he switched teams. So he said he wanted to be on my team. He wanted to play alongside me. So it's like, sir, you're the one who wanted to come play with me. You don't come play with me and then yell at me and get mad because you feel like I'm not being the most athletic player on the court. No, you don't get to do that to me. So I think that's something else that you have to be willing to do. You have to be willing to fight for your right to be beautiful, if that's what you want. Like in my case, I'm willing to clap back on a bitch. I'm willing to clap back on people. I am willing to diss other people. If you say something negative about me, I will find something negative to say about you. No, I'm not the bigger person. No, I will not be mature. No, I don't claim to be a good girl or a good person. So, if somebody talks shit, then I will talk shit about them. You talk shit about my looks, I'll talk shit about yours. You don't compliment me, I won't compliment you. You pay me dust, I'll pay you dust. You say that I don't speak to nobody, but then you don't speak to me. Bitch, I'm not speaking to you. So I'm not scared of other people. I feel like it takes a lot of courage to be beautiful. I've said that so many times on this channel, and that's a big part of social climbing as an exotical is having the courage to stand out, having the courage to take that pedestal. Because guess what? If you decide to be ugly, pretty privilege is not going to go away. Just because you decide to be crusty, it doesn't mean that people are going to say, oh, we should stop giving other people pretty privilege. So, all those girls that try to say, oh, you shouldn't care how people look, yeah, of course we shouldn't care, but at the end of the day, somebody is going to get treated with pretty privilege. Somebody is going to get pedestalized. Somebody is going to get that princess treatment. Somebody is going to be perceived in a positive way. Somebody is going to get that halo effect. Someone will get that visibility. Somebody will be able to always make money off their beauty. So if it's not you, if you choose not to be that, that's fine, but just don't get mad when another girl gets it. Don't get mad when somebody else gets a promotion because they look good and now they want them to be the manager or they want them to be the head of the real estate office or whatever. Just don't get mad when others get that opportunity. So I think that's a part of what helps me to stay with my pretty privilege because I'd rather have pretty privilege versus not have it. I'd rather be pretty than be ugly, obviously. So the bottom line is no matter where you go, there's always going to be someone who will be offended by your beauty. There will always be someone who will react negatively to how you look. There's always going to be someone who stereotypes you. Like in my case, I do get a lot of crazy reactions from men. If I'm in a co-ed setting, it's going to be a fucking shit show. And I talk about this all the time in the Patreon. There is going to be a shit show. I'm either going to get treated with the princess treatment and people will fight to hold the door for me and all that shit, or it's going to be the exact opposite where I'm going to be dissed and I'm going to be humiliated. Somebody's going to try to embarrass me. A man will try to assert his dominance over me or whatever. So that's just a part of the pretty girl lifestyle. So if you can't take the heat, you got to get out of the kitchen. And most women actually will get out of the kitchen. Most women are cowards. They are. They're scary ass bitches. They're too scared to start the business. They're too scared to start their YouTube channels. They're too scared to start a hair page because they think their shit's too nappy or whatever. They think they're too dark to do certain things. They're too scared to wear a fucking red lipstick, for God's sakes. Because they've been told that they're too dark and black. And apparently if you're black, you're not allowed to wear red lipstick. So some women, they're just, they're scary ass bitches. They just allow other people to dominate them. They allow other people to stomp on them and crush them in the beauty community. And I will never let a bitch try to step on me. You will never step on me. I will forever be beautiful. I don't care what I have to do. I don't care how many different outfits I have to wear. Bitch, you will never take me out of my beauty identity. I will always meet my internalized beauty standard. So I don't give a fuck what other women say their rules are. Like, no, just because you can't wear synthetic wigs, just because you can't wear cheap clothes or you can't wear anything except Zara, just because you're forced to only wear Balenciaga, I don't care. I can do what I want with my beauty. It's my body, my choice. So I really feel like when people try to bully you out of your pretty privilege, that's actually a form of misogyny. Because what they're saying is, I'm in charge of your body. Because remember, your beauty is based on your body, your physical appearance. So it's like, no, bitch, you're not about to control how I handle my body. You're not going to control how I walk around in my own body. Absolutely not. So you're telling me that I'm a descendant of African American slaves. And now I have to be an emotional slave to your fucking beauty standard? Bitch, get out of my face. I will never be an emotional slave to somebody else. Oh, so now I'm not allowed to be pretty because Tiffany said that you're only supposed to wear 20-inch bust down, so I have to follow what Tiffany's doing? No. I don't have to follow anybody. I can do what I want. This is my shit. This is my body. It's my eyes, my nose, my lips, my face. I'm not hurting anyone by doing whatever I want to myself. So the only people that would be offended are people who can't benefit off your beauty, or they're people who cannot use your beauty for their gain. So, that's what I've noticed. The only people who get mad at my looks are the women who can't attain them, the women who feel outshined, or the men who don't have access to me. They don't get to fuck me or whatever. They don't get to use me for attention and validation, and then a lot of men get pissed off when I don't automatically validate them. They feel super rejected by me because I'm the pretty girl. If I were ugly, they wouldn't care about my opinion, but because I'm pretty, then now suddenly they care. So it's like, no, you don't get to control my body. I get to social climb however I want. I get to utilize whatever tools I see fit. I get to use whatever I have access to. Oh, well, that's not fair because you're already pretty. You already have long hair, Exoticals United. So why are you wearing wigs? That's something that I've been asked before. Like, your hair's already long. You already have quote unquote good hair. Your hair's already curly. So that's not fair that you also get to wear wigs. Well, yeah, because I'm a versatile ass bitch. Stay mad. So you're mad because you're not versatile. You're mad because your hair is bald head. And by the way, when it comes to hair, part of why I talk so much about hair length and hair growth is because I've noticed that, especially in the black community, hair length is actually very pedestalized. I didn't even realize it until I came on YouTube. So no matter what your hair texture is, having long, healthy hair, and specifically having all of your edges, having healthy edges specifically, so around the front and around the nape, having healthy hair, that is a huge pedestal. So if you are trying to grow your hair, I'm always going to encourage you to grow it as long as possible, make it look as healthy as possible, make it as thick as possible, because then your extensions actually look better. So like in my case, I can do so many more versatile hairstyles with extensions versus a bald-headed woman. Because the bald-headed woman, she can only wear a lace front, or she can only wear a half wig or whatever, because she doesn't really have a lot of hair to cover the tracks and stuff, or maybe she doesn't have a lot of edges or whatever, or maybe her hair is brittle, and so her hair is not malleable. So whenever she does a braid out or twist out, bantu knots, etc., her hair breaks off. But if your hair is healthy and you've got good elasticity in your hair, then you can do whatever you want. You can do bantu knots, curls, you can do, I don't know, twist outs, braid outs, whatever, half wigs, sew in, braids, and then your hair is like durable. So it's not just falling out. You're not damaging your beauty as easily, and you're able to do way more versatile styles with extensions or not. And so I think that's another trigger. But this pretty girl said, does your personality privilege give you joy, and how? So, does my personality privilege give me joy? I would say my ability to connect with other people, I think that is a source of joy. So, like, being an extrovert, I feel like the internet does kind of cater to introverts lately. It's more trendy to kind of like be an introvert, and it's very trendy to like talk about neurodivergence and everything. So that happens to not be my story. I do have ADHD, but I don't know if that's considered. I don't think that's really neurodivergent. But in my case, as an extrovert, I do think that one of the advantages is that I can make female friends. I'm actually very good at making friends in real life. I am a very friendly person. This YouTube channel is probably the most toxic thing about me, honestly. Like in real life, I'm a very chill, very relaxed, just very fun person. So, as far as your personality privilege, all you have to do is ask yourself, okay, what kind of friends do I want? What kind of life do I want? What kind of family do I want? Like some people are close to their families. Maybe they just want to hang out with their sisters or whatever. So, how does your personality contribute to that? What advantages do you have in your personality? So, like in my case, I wouldn't say that my personality itself gives me a sense of joy. I think it's more so the actions that I take. So, like being willing to talk to other people, being bold enough. Actually, being an extrovert, it helps me to learn other languages. So, you guys, if you're in the Patreon, you know that I am studying 2 other languages right now. Well, one of them I'm really studying, but the third language I just started about a month ago. So, in the case of personality privilege, being an extrovert, it does help me to practice speaking in another language. So if I meet somebody, like let's say the waiter at the restaurant or like some random person speaks this language, I will just bust out in the other language. And then I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to stumble over the language. I'm going to fuck it up. But then the person will correct me, and then it helps me to learn faster. So I think that's a part of my personality privilege. But if you want to know your personality privilege, what you can do is you can take a personality quiz. So whichever one resonates with you. So for me, I like the 16 personalities the best. I'm not much of a human design person or I forgot what the other ones are. Like I've taken the disc test, I've taken the human design, and then the 16 personalities. So I am an ENTJ, and then on human design, I'm the projector personality type, which makes a lot of sense. I am very much a keep the same energy person. I will mirror back to you. Whoever you are, I'm probably going to mirror that back to you. However you treat me is how I'm going to treat you. So it makes sense that I'm a projector on human design because I'm just going to project back onto you whatever you project onto me. Um, but yeah, you can look up your personality and just look up the pros and cons of your personality. So, a part of why I talk so much about emotions and my emotional state on this channel is because I'm an ENTJ. So, with ENTJs, one of our weaknesses is recognizing our emotional state, especially recognizing our emotions in real time. I feel like a lot of us have issues with processing our emotions. And so, because I knew that about my personality, I decided to work on that. So I spent at least the last decade really studying like my emotions and how I feel and where did these emotions come from and like how did my childhood contribute to my emotional state. So I think that knowing the weaknesses of your personality and then working on that, kind of focusing on those things more, that can actually help you as well. So like that has helped me to social climb because, now I have a whole YouTube channel where I can process my emotions by making these videos. And then there are thousands of people who can relate. So I think that's another good kind of like social climbing tool. Um, but this pretty girl said she wants me to talk about pretty privilege versus personality privilege. So if you don't have personality privilege, you're fucked. And I've talked about this in my Patreon. Actually, I do not think pretty privilege is the most important privilege. And I keep all my best content. I keep all the real tea on Patreon. By the way, the difference between the Patreon and members page, Patreon is just audios, and the members page is extra videos. So the members page is going to have more videos similar to my channel that you see here. And then the Patreon, it doesn't have any videos at all. It's all just kind of like a podcast format. But anyone who knows me knows that pretty privilege, it's definitely in my top 5. It's in my top 5 most important privileges, but I kind of pedestalize other privileges more than pretty privilege. So for example, you guys hear me talk about education so much on this channel. Education privilege, that's huge because there are people all over the world who can't even read. There are people all over the world, like there are women who literally can't go to school. So you're never going to hear me downplay you and tell you to not go to school. You'll never hear me tell you to not get those certifications. I don't care what kind of school you go to. I don't care if it's a real estate school. I don't care if it's a hair and cosmetology school or whatever, community college, some sort of teaching school. I don't care what you're doing, but I always have talked about how education privilege is one of my top privileges. I would not have this YouTube channel if I had not gone to college specifically. And I don't know why it's always people who didn't go to college who stereotype college as, oh, college teaches you how to work a 9 to 5. No, the fuck it doesn't. I did not have any business skills before I got into college. When I got into college, I learned business skills because I was surrounded by entrepreneurs. Sometimes I would take classes where I had to do little business stuff. I had to take classes on how to speak in front of others, like how to persuade others of my opinion, how to debate with others, all this random shit. So it seems random, but now that I'm an adult, my education, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it weren't for my education. And so I'm very proud. I'm very proud of that. That is a big part of my identity. I wouldn't say I'm defined by it though. Like I'm not even in the alumni association, actually. I do all that bragging and I'm not in the alumni association. No, I probably am going to join it though. Maybe sometime this fall. Um, but yeah, I actually value my education privilege. So, I am reading all the time. I love to read books. I like to watch documentaries. Anything that's going to educate me, I like doing that. When I travel, I enjoy doing cultural exploration. So, kind of like going to the museums, going to whatever cultural monuments they have in that city. Something that's an educational activity is something that's like nourishing for me. It kind of it strengthens my self esteem. It makes me feel more open minded. Being educated, it also helps me to connect with other people. So when I say be educated, I'm not just talking about college. I'm just saying loving to learn in general. That's actually something that I do probably more than pretty privilege because I'm always like every evening, for the most part, I'm going to be watching like, those travel documentaries and stuff where it talks about like different countries and what it's like, or like the history of Spain, or like what did the Aztecs do, or what's the Mayan calendar about? Like, why do people care about that? I love watching stuff like that. So I actually will learn in my free time. That's something that I actually value more than pretty privilege, for example. So there's that. And then I would say cultural capital is another one. So multiculturalism, that's probably, I don't know if I would say it's my number one. I don't know if I have really a number one. I do have like a top five though. But yeah, being multicultural, having that sort of privilege, kind of this fluid identity, that's very important to me. So being socially adaptable. So guess what? I don't have to code switch for shit because I authentically fit in with different cultures because I am educated on their culture. So no, I don't feel out of place when I go to an event that is celebrating something European. No, I don't feel out of place or like, oh, they're racist. No, everybody is not racist. You've only been educated on racism. That's why you think everybody's racist. Is because your entire life, your entire culture and your education is focused on racism. And that's not a bad thing, but that's not all there is in the world. And so for me, being multicultural is actually more important. Having that cultural capital, because if you've got pretty privilege and you don't have anything else, guess what you're going to end up as? You're just going to get impregnated by somebody. You're probably just going to get fucked and impregnated by somebody dusty. And then you're just going to live your life in poverty most likely because you don't have the other privileges to stack. This is why I talk about privilege stacking. This channel is not just focused on pretty privilege. I always tell you guys to privilege stack. Or at least that's what I do. I wouldn't be where I'm at if it weren't for me stacking multiple privileges. No, my looks didn't cause me to have this fucking channel. I don't even show my face on this channel. So I think a lot of people are disingenuous and a lot of people they're so far at the bottom of society that they think that pretty privilege will solve all their problems. Oh, if I just get a BBL and have a pretty ass, then all my problems will be solved. Well, actually, no. Because there's a difference between just being pretty versus being pretty and smart, being pretty and educated, being pretty and talented. Look at Beyonce. Look at Beyonce compared to all the other pretty girls in the industry who had no talent. So, that's something else to think about is talent privilege. What are your gifts? Are you good at something? Because if so, I hope you're doing it every day. Like if you're good at painting or maybe you're good at dancing or singing, it's very important to keep that part of you alive. But as far as personality privilege, I feel like my personality, it helps me in terms of being a content creator because part of part of being an ENTJ is we are naturally very controversial. We don't really follow social norms. We tend to go in and just fuck shit up. We break all the rules. A lot of people that they call extremists are ENTJs. Unfortunately, some of the biggest villains in history have also been ENTJs. Um, but I think that on social media, that can actually be a privilege because in my case, I'm YouTube's most hated content creator. I'm the one that everybody loves to hate on YouTube. I'm the one that everybody loves to count out. Everybody loves to say that my talking points are trash or I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm constantly contradicting myself. Okay, well, me being the YouTube villain, that actually works in my favor because now I have a stronger audience. That helps versus just being a generic content creator. So, in terms of personality privilege, that's how I use kind of my quote unquote negative traits. That's how I use it to kind of alchemize it into like a form of money. That's a part of my business model. Same thing with like Shira 7 is a good example. Princella, the queen maker, is also a good example. These are people where they used their quote unquote controversial side. They know how to use that to their advantage. They don't allow other people's opinions to cause them to switch their talking points. They don't try to pander, basically. So I think that's a part of the personality privilege that I've used. So in your case, maybe you're very good at interviews. Maybe you're good at like getting along with people at work. Some people are popular at work. Like some of my family members, they're popular at work. They do really well in the workplace. They always have work friends and they talk to their friends outside of work and they have all these work buddies and stuff. Like some people are very good at navigating corporate culture. So I think that different personalities have different pros and cons. So whatever measurement of personality you want to use, you just have to pick that and then just study your own personality. So for those of you who believe in astrology and all that, some people believe in that, like the signs, like Scorpio, Pisces, whatever. Some people think that, that's a good metric for them to measure their personality. So that's my first question. How are you measuring your personality? Who are you? Are you an introvert, an extrovert? Are you eclectic? Are you kind of like quirky? In my case, I'm very quirky. I'm very inherently nerdy and like zany. I don't know how to describe it. I'm nerdy, I'm quirky, I'm like I don't know. I'm not a cool girl for lack of better words. Like I don't have this coolness about me. Some girls are naturally like that. They have the cool girl vibe. I wouldn't say I have a cool girl vibe. My personality advantage is being the nerdy, funny, goofy type of person. I'm very goofy. A lot of people say I make them laugh or like I don't know, I surprise people with being funny. Like I've been told that several times that people are surprised that I'm actually funny. And it's my nerdiness that makes me funny. Like I make up words all the time. And so the advantage of that is that I would be good at making up insults and making up new names for people, like calling them belugas or calling them Dustisha and all this stuff. So what's your personality privilege? What do you get complimented on the most in terms of your personality? That's your personality privilege. So, in terms of like friendships, in terms of dating, in terms of your job, just think about what personality traits you get complimented on the most. And then, that's how you know what your privilege is. Like in real life, a lot of people say I'm very sweet. A lot of people say I'm sweet, I'm kind, I'm unproblematic, I'm chill. Some people say, well, actually, a lot of people say I'm inspiring. So, what parts of your personality do people notice the most? Because that tells you what makes you special. Privilege is basically something that makes you special. It's a positive perception that people think makes you special. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.